Have you ever noticed how the human mind decides someone's worth in the first 3 seconds before a word is spoken, before a name is known, before a story is heard? No, that is where this story begins, in that invisible moment when a billionaire's wife walked into a room and was emotionally erased. Not because she lacked value, but because racism taught people to look past her. And as women, especially women of color, this silence is familiar. You can feel it when conversations continue. Without you, when eyes slide away, when respect is delayed until someone important speaks for you. What hurts most is not the insult, but the psychological message. You don't belong here. Men in those rooms often noticed her, but not as a mind, not as a voice only, as something to observe, to measure, to compare. Obsession without respect is not admiration. It is another form of control. Many men watch women closely, study their confidence, their beauty, their composure, yet still deny them basic acknowledgement because acknowledging them would mean accepting their power. This is why silence becomes a weapon. And here's the truth. I want you to hold gently, but firmly. Being ignored does not mean you are invisible. It means the room is emotionally unsafe. As a therapist would tell you, your nervous system reacts to this silence because it is a social rejection, and the brain processes it like pain. But you are not broken for feeling it. The mistake women make is trying to earn visibility by shrinking, softening, or over-explaining. When men obsess but don't respect, your job is not to prove your worth, it is to protect it. Speak. Once, clearly. Stand still in your truth. Let your calm become uncomfortable for those who expect you to disappear. The billionaire's wife didn't raise her voice. She didn't beg to be seen. Her presence itself became a mirror, reflecting their bias back at them, and that is your power too. Racism feeds on reaction, but it collapses in front of grounded self-worth. Remember this. You are not ignored because you are small. You are ignored because your presence challenges a system that was never built for your recognition. Walk in knowing that. Leave knowing that. And never confuse silence with your value. Was never about you. Why does the human mind believe that money can buy safety, dignity, or freedom from judgment, when psychology shows us that bias often survives even in the presence of power, as the story proves it? A billionaire's wife stood surrounded by luxury, influence, and success. Yet racism still reached her first, long before respect did. And for women listening, this moment matters deeply because it exposes a truth we are rarely taught: external. Success does not guarantee internal acceptance from others. Men in those spaces noticed her wealth, her beauty, her composure, yet their obsession stayed superficial. They watched her closely, curious, even intrigued, but still placed her in a silent box, labeled other. This is how obsession works without empathy: studies you, but refuses to honor you. And as a therapist would say, when men obsess, but don't respect it, creates confusion in women. It's making them question their own worth instead of questioning the bias in front of them. Let me be clear. Racism doesn't check your bank balance before it acts. It doesn't ask if your husband is powerful or if your lifestyle is extraordinary. It looks at identity first and decides who deserves full humanity. That realization can feel crushing, but it can also be freeing. Because if wealth didn't protect her, then your value was never meant to be proven through achievement, beauty, or association. What should you do in moments like this? Stop trying to outperform prejudice. Stop believing that if you become more of something, the world will finally treat you fairly. When men obsess over you yet deny you respect, recognize that this is not desire, it is insecurity responding to your presence. Your role is not to educate every biased room or soften yourself to be accepted. Your role is to anchor yourself so deeply in self-trust that their behavior loses its authority over your emotions. The billionaire's wife didn't collapse under the weight of their assumptions. She stood as living evidence that success and discrimination can exist at the same time and that neither defines her. Take this with you. Racism loses its grip the moment you stop seeking permission to belong. You already do. Why does the human brain accept the same truth only when it is spoken by a voice it already trusts? and ignore it when it comes from a woman standing right in front of it. In this story, the billionaire's wife spoke calmly, clearly, and with intelligence, yet her words dissolved into the air as if they had never existed. The moment her husband repeated the same sentence, the room leaned in, heads nodded, respect appeared. And for women watching, this moment stings because it is painfully familiar. Men often hear women, but they don't listen. They notice your presence, your confidence, your beauty, sometimes even obsess over it, yet when you speak, they subconsciously wait for validation from another man. Hey, this is not about your clarity or intelligence. It is about social conditioning that ranks voices before it hears ideas. As a therapist would explain, this creates a quiet emotional injury in women, because being unheard triggers self-doubt and teaches you to shrink your voice. But hear this carefully. Your truth did not become valid because a man spoke it. It was always valid. The injustice is that the room needed permission to acknowledge it. What should you do when this happens? First, do not repeat yourself endlessly. Repetition in an unsafe room drains your power. Speak once with intention, then pause. Let the silence sit. Let others feel the absence they created. When men obsess over your presence but disregard your voice, understand that obsession without listening is not admiration, is control. Your responsibility is not to fight for space that should have been freely given. Your responsibility is to choose where your voice belongs. The billionaire's wife did not celebrate when respect finally arrived. She observed it. She learned who valued her mind and who only responded to authority, and that awareness is freedom. Take this lesson into your own life. If someone only hears you when a louder, socially approved voice repeats you, that space is not designed for your growth. Protect your energy. Line with people who listen the first time. And remember, the most powerful voice in the room is not the one echoed by others, but the one that knows it does not need an echo to be true. Why does the human mind feel exposed the moment it realizes it has misjudged someone? And why does that exposure turn into discomfort instead of accountability? In this story, the billionaire's wife did not raise her voice or demand attention. She simply spoke one sentence that revealed her intelligence, authority, and self-awareness. And in that quiet moment, the room shifted. The racism that once felt invisible suddenly became obvious. Not because she accused anyone, but because her presence forced people to confront their own behavior. For women, this moment carries deep emotional weight because it shows that the most powerful exposure of bias is not anger, but clarity. Men in the room had been watching her all along, some with curiosity, some with obsession, some with judgment. Yet none had expected her to disrupt the narrative they created about her. Obsession often relies on control, on believing you understand someone without truly knowing them. When she spoke, she broke that illusion. As a therapist would explain, this is when shame appears not the healthy kind that leads to growth, but the defensive kind that freezes people. Smiles tightened. Respect arrived late, awkwardly, almost apologetically. And this is important for women to understand. Delayed respect is not a gift, it is evidence. It shows who needed proof and who already believed in your humanity. Should you do when your competence exposes others' bias? Do not rush to comfort their discomfort. Do not soften yourself to make their realization easier. Let the moment stand. Let the truth breathe. When men obsess over you, yet underestimate, your calm confidence becomes the mirror they cannot avoid. The billionaire's wife did not savor the moment. She observed it with emotional intelligence. She learned who could be trusted and who only respected power when it embarrassed them not to. Carry this lesson forward when respect comes only. After revelation, you are witnessing someone's limitation, not your breakthrough. You do not need to educate every room or correct every misjudgment. Sometimes your quiet clarity is enough. And in that stillness, remember this: the moment that exposes their shame is the moment you reclaim your power without saying another word. Why does the human psyche feel most threatened? Not by anger, but by a woman who remains calm, self-respecting, and unmoved in a space that expected her to break? In the final moment of this story, the billionaire's wife did something radical. She chose dignity over reaction. She did not argue, perform, or seek validation from the very people who ignored her. And for women listening, this is where the deepest lesson lives. Men in those rooms had watched her closely from the beginning, some with fascination, some with quiet obsession, trying to understand her place, her power, her relevance. And when she refused to chase their approval, something shifted. Obsession loses its grip when it cannot provoke. As a therapist would explain, dignity is a boundary, and boundaries confuse people who benefit from your emotional labor. Racism often waits for anger, because anger can be dismissed. But self-worth cannot be debated. What should you do when you realize you are being underestimated, ignored, or quietly judged? Do not become louder to prove you matter. Do not become smaller to stay safe. Ground yourself. Breathe. Let your posture, your pauses, and your silence speak. The billionaire's wife did not need revenge. Her steadiness became the consequence. People remembered her not because she fought, but because she remained unshaken. And this is crucial for women to hear. When men obsess over you, yet fail to respect you, the most powerful response is not explanation. It is withdrawal of access. You choose where your energy goes. You choose who gets your warmth, your insight, your emotional availability. Dignity teaches others how to treat you without a single lecture. Racism feeds on reaction, insecurity, and self-doubt, but it collapses in the presence of someone who knows who they are. Carry this with you like a therapist's closing truth. You do not need to win every room to be whole. Sometimes walking away with your self-respect intact is the loudest statement you will ever make.